Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast.
Guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast. We are back on track. Life has not slowed down, but I was able to find some free time with all the craziness and all the hectic things that have been happening to get back on it with these episodes. And this one's going to be a really good one. So I've got a local guy, really good buddy of mine named Hunter Edwards. He is the newest bow tech up at Ace Hardware and Social Circle. And the dude also knows how to kill pretty good deer. He is an awesome dude. And, this is going to be one of those episodes where we just kind of BS for a little bit, talk about some stuff. I've got some topics that I want to cover and sort of get his perspective on. And then obviously we're going to talk about, how he got into hunting and, some of the deer that he's after and some of the deer that he's killed. So before we get into it, if you guys listened to last week's episode, it was kind of not even really an episode, just more like a little snippet, like a 20-minute thing where I was letting you guys know what was going on. Yeah, I mean, nothing huge has really changed. Bucks have been moving pretty slowly. Haven't seen trike in 5 days. Did get some decent bucks on the new spot, so that's cool. But hopefully, I can find time to even get out there. It has been wild lately. Literally, I could go into it and it'd be a whole nother 20-minute spiel. Let's just say it's one punch after another, but in all that darkness, there is light, and that is where Jesus comes in. I know I'm doing this part in the forefront, but really after this election and after all the trials that I've been going through the past couple of weeks, I needed to put him first. And I think that's what I've been missing, with this whole thing, just hunting, life, family, everything. So if you don't know Jesus, or you maybe think that he's not who he says he is, just look at the whole Trump situation. Okay. I'm not going to talk about it for too long. Trump obviously did win the election, so that's awesome. For those of you that, voted for him, good for you. For those of you who didn't, it's not going to be as bad as you might think it is. Everybody has their reasons, I don't judge. But when that first assassination attempt was I guess enacted on him, and the shooter missed by millimeters, and Trump turned his head at the very last second, that right there is when I knew, A, God had his hand in this, and B, that he was going to win. And clearly he did. And to me, that's God showing like, hey, I haven't given up on y'all yet. Don't give up on me. So just a little bit of a early episode. I'm not going to say sermon, but just something I wanted to talk about because, I think things are changing. I think things are going to get better. And I'm very optimistic about that. And I know that, as crazy as life has been, as difficult as it's been, it's not going to stay like that forever. So if you don't know Jesus, please give him a shot. That has been something very near and dear to my heart for the past few years. And this podcast is I mean, I give all the credit to God for everything that happens with it, hunting wise, family wise, podcast wise, all of that. None of the things that I've been able to do and the people I've been able to talk with, I wouldn't be able to do any of that without Jesus' help and having him be the one at the forefront of this. So that's my sermon for this episode. So it was a little long. So before we get into it with Hunter, obviously we have to do the partners. As you can tell, the hat I'm wearing and the shirt that I'm wearing, for those who didn't listen to last week, we are now partnered up with Working Class Bow Hunter. That is something that I honestly never thought would happen. Me and Kurt have been buddies for a couple years now, and he reached out about 2 months ago, wanted to work together. So here we are. So if you want to get some of their merch, they have some of the coolest stuff that I mean, honestly, I'm pretty much only wearing Working Class Bow Hunter stuff right now. Not because of that, just because I have it and I freaking love those guys. So go to workingclassbowhunter.com and use the code SEBH15 at checkout, and that will save you 15% off all merch. That's hats, shirts, all that stuff. Really, really cool dudes. If you haven't listened to their podcast, you need to. They actually just had on At the time of recording this, they just had on Cage from Ruthless Archery. Very interesting episode. I honestly think I might reach out to Cage and try to get him on and go more in depth in like the whole arrow thing, the bow stuff. Obviously, Bergie is going to be coming on soon. Chris's episode from Camo Dust is coming up soon. But working class is a staple in the hunting industry now, in my opinion, and it's just a bunch of really good dudes that make awesome merch and they have an awesome podcast. So, like I said, go to workingclassbowhunter.com. Check out everything that they have and use the code SEBH15 at checkout, and that will save you 15%. So next up is going to be Osseo Gear, only camo brand that I trust. I know there's some really good ones out there, but for me, Osseo is top of the list, and I am very thankful to be able to work with Joe and everybody over there. They've kept me concealed from all the deer that I've seen this year, except for maybe like one, and that's because I was moving. Wasn't paying attention, long story. But Osseo is extremely comfortable, extremely durable, extremely quiet, and they have you covered from head to toe and everything you need for all seasons. So go to osseogear.com and use the code SEBH, and that also will save you, I believe, 15%. Next up is going to be VPA. American-made broadheads with a lifetime warranty. I don't really see how you can get any better than that. They have over 70 different types of heads that you can choose from. I know there's some new stuff coming. I haven't talked to Ryan and Jeff about it yet, just because we're still kind of a ways away from ATA. But that is something that is going to be coming down the pipeline soon. I'm sure there's some new things in the works. And so once I hear about that and can talk about it, I'll let you guys know. But go to vparchery.com. Check out over 70 different broadheads, all American made, all with a lifetime warranty, and use the code SEBH10 to save 10%. Next up is going to be Summit Tree Stands. Summit is, in my opinion, one of the most crucial tree stand companies that there are in the industry, or that there's been in the industry. They are extremely well versed in what they try to cover for all of hunters, bow hunters, gun hunters, whatever. They cover you from climbers to hang-ons. They've got a bunch of different types of sticks. Really, they have a bunch of different type of accessories. That's the cool part. And then obviously they also sell safety harnesses, which we all should be wearing when we get in a tree. So go to summitstands.com, look at everything they have. I know there's some new stuff coming down the pipeline. I have some ideas I want to throw at Jake and see what they think. And so who knows what's going to be coming from that. But go to their website, and when you check out everything that you want and you're at checkout, use the code SEBH15 to save 10%, or I'm sorry, 15%. And you guys have been killing that code, so keep using it. Next up is going to be the boutique. So I actually had Justin, my buddy Justin from Degenerate Bow Hunter, reach out to me today and say that he was actually getting some wraps from the boutique. Michael Stonebreaker does an amazing job, really high quality. You can literally make any type of wrap you want. So go to the boutiquellc.com to get your custom arrows made, custom wraps made. And once you do all of that, whatever you decide to do, use SEBHP for free shipping. Next up is going to be Bergie Bowsmith. Bergie actually got shouted out on a most recent Working Class Bow Hunter episode. And I thought that was really cool, that they're getting to learn, or I guess hear about Bergie and see what he's about. He will be able to take any bow and tune it perfectly. I think Bergie said some stuff before, like, you really have to tune the shooter, not the bow. Obviously, you have to tune the bow, but a bow's a machine. You get that thing set up right, you tune the shooter to the bow, not the bow to the shooter. And some people will, look at that and not agree, but Bergie explains it way better than I do. So go to bergiebowsmith.com, get your appointment set with him, send him your bow. He will get you set up, and he also is now a dealer for a bunch of different companies. So go into the shop section of the website and pick out everything you want. Once you do, use the code SEBH15 for 15% off. Next up is going to be Nose Down Scents, which actually, I'm looking at the wrong list. I have a list of all the partners. That way I don't forget anybody. And this one is from the last week's thing. So anyway, Nose Down's a great scent company. You can listen to the ad throughout the episode. Next up is going to be Typical Sportsman, though. Typical Sportsman is my buddy Dylan's brand. It's his Instagram handle, and there's actually some stuff coming down the pipeline I cannot talk about yet, but as soon as I do, you guys will hear about it. But he's got a lot of big things happening. So go to typicalsportsman.com, look at all the merchandise he's got, and use the code typical20 to save 20%. Next up is going to be dialed archery. So obviously, I've been shooting the dialed Arxos for quite a while. I mean, I'd say almost not close to a year, but we're creeping up on a year. Best bow sight I've ever used. But they just dropped the new proof, and the proof is the Arxos, but I feel like improved in ways I never would have thought of. And so go to dialedarchery.com, check out all they have for that, and go support those guys. They are definitely changing the game. I think that's Camo Dust. Duh, obviously. Camo Dust is my go-to. I will only use that to use scent cover. I can firmly say that as long as I do it right, I've never been winded. So that is something that I really believe in. And when Chris comes on here, he'll talk about it. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everybody. Normally I'd say Ace, but we're going to talk about Ace in this episode. So yeah, if I forgot anyone, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure that's everybody I needed to cover. If not, one more. Full Force Hunting Products. Sorry about that. Dan, don't kill me. It's been one of those days. So my buddy Dan's got this company called Full Force Hunting Products that's out of Michigan. They sell minerals, attractants, scents, scent ropes, all that stuff. And I have put some of their minerals out and attractants out, and it works. I mean, honestly, it's very shocking how well it works. So go to fullforcehuntingproducts.com, look at everything that they offer, and go order yours today. Now I think that's everybody. Truly, if I forgot somebody, I'm sorry. But we need to get started with this episode. It's late. So let's go ahead and get Hunter on and see where this goes. Y'all, we are back, finally able to do what we've been doing, do a full-length episode with a guest, and the guest is a very good buddy of mine, Mr. Hunter Edwards. You local guys probably going to know who that is. He is the newest bow tech over at Ace Hardware and Social Circle. He is also a straight-up big buck killer and a pretty lady slayer.
I don't know about all that now.
Hey, look, man, you've shown me your repertoire. Okay, so
yeah,
I know you got the game, dude. But we ain't here to talk about that. We're here to talk about deer. So, I guess for the people who don't know you, man, because I've known you for about 2 years, and we did kind of fall off there for a little bit. And what was so funny is we've got a mutual friend, Christian, who has been on the podcast before. And I just hit him up one day, got a new bow, was gonna go sight it in, and you happened to be with him. And I feel like I have probably talked to you almost every day or every other day since. And
pretty much, yeah.
I just want to tell people who you are, like how you got into this, how you were able to learn how to find these big deer, because you've probably killed some of the biggest deer out of most people that I know. So, or at least consistently.
Okay. Growing up, I was extremely, extremely fortunate just to be able to hunt the places I did. I've been to Kentucky, Illinois, Tennessee, Alabama. I've been a lot of states that most kids growing up would not be able to have gone to and hunted, and just been able to have learned what I learned throughout the years. And my dad was on staff with Hoyt, and he was pretty much all I ever saw him do was just bow hunt. And if he ever did anything else besides bow hunt, it was hunt with a muzzleloader. And I've pretty much picked that up from him. And all I've done for the past, I think, at least 4 or 5 years now is just strictly bow hunting. And I've killed a pretty good amount of deer over the past few years just bow hunting. A lot of years it would be just a bunch of does and maybe 1 or 2 decent bucks. And then some years I would get into some really good deer. Just in learning to do what I've done, my dad actually was diagnosed with cancer when I was younger, and we weren't able to necessarily go as far or go to the places I was able to go before. And I was 16 at the time, and I saw, I think, Seek One on YouTube, and I thought, why can't I just do that around here? Why can't I just go knock on doors and hunt in people's backyard?
Hmm.
And I first started doing it on the road that I lived on. I went and knocked on everybody's property or door that had at least 5 acres or more wood. And slowly but surely, I would start branching and getting farther and farther away. Like I would go to opposite side of McDonald, Stockbridge, Conyers, Covington, and then I finally ended up getting up to Atlanta a few times and found some really, really big deer, but never was able to capitalize on them. And just throughout the years, I would probably say I've killed more good deer hunting McDonough than I did anywhere else. So that
Well, and
was
that's
just, it was, go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, like, that's one thing. So you and I kind of, people that know, that was my, I guess, introduction to bow hunting was Seek One. Um, obviously I knew what bow hunting was, right? Like as a kid watching
Yeah.
Bone Collector and Realtree and all that. But Seek One was the first, the first, I guess, group of guys that I watched and was like, oh wow, dude, you can kill deer in people's backyards. I never knew that. And they're not killing just
Oh, yeah.
regular deer; they're killing 200-inch deer. And when you
Every
and I,
year it seems.
yeah, and when you and I first met, you sent me over some photos of bucks, and I'm like, dude, because I didn't know that you were doing like the suburban bow hunting thing, but in the country. And it once I figured out like the areas that you were hunting, it made sense because I hunted in Rockdale at the time, and still to this day, the biggest deer I've ever had on camera was in that county. And I don't normally say what
Oh,
county, but
yeah.
I don't hunt there anymore, and at least for now. And yeah, dude. So it's interesting to hear you say that because a lot of people that I know that are out of Georgia, like they're not, they're out of state, right? They don't live in Georgia. They've never hunted
Yeah.
Georgia. They're like, oh, Georgia's. I mean, Andre DeQuisto, perfect example. He said on a podcast that somebody from Georgia invited him, and he's like, well, why would I come down to Georgia? And they're like, oh, we have pretty trees. It's like, I'm not there to see trees. I'm there to kill big deer. But we have them. It's
Yeah.
just, you have to do the door knocking thing or own thousands of
Yes.
acres of a lease or just get lucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That
So
too. One of those three.
yeah. And so like I completely relate to what you have to do because I'm basically doing the same thing. You just have way more spots than me and better quality deer. So
Hey, I got a lot of time. I had a lot of time on my head this summer. So I
yeah.
got to have my fun knocking on some doors to say the least.
Well, based off what
So
I've seen, it's paid off or it's going to pay off.
yep. Hopefully it'll pay off with a few deer before the season's
Yeah.
up.
So what have you noticed? And I want to compare what I've seen to what you've seen. But obviously, I mean, you have hunted public land and stuff before, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So comparing
Yeah.
that to like what we do on the smaller pieces, what what strategies are you having to use for that? Because when I go to public land, I'm basically just looking at terrain features and knowing like, okay, if say this ridge that I think is going to look good has nothing on it, no feed trees, no sign, I can go to the next one and I can probably find something. But when we do the small pieces, like I'm on 1 acre, I know you've got a couple small spots. You can't do
Yeah.
much there. So like, what's the strategy you use?
On public land, I and that goes back to my roots of when I got to hunt Kentucky and Illinois, everything because I was hunting big crop CRP and a bunch of big hardwood ridges and everything. So I'm trying to go back to my roots and what I.
Okay, we're back. Little technical difficulties, but we fixed it. So the question was, what strategies do you use on the smaller pieces compared to what you have to use on public land where we have thousands of acres to just run around and play?
And with the smaller pieces, what I'm looking for when I first thing I do is I try and find smaller pieces that are in a funnel between neighborhoods, between houses that are going to bigger blocks of woods that I know deer are going to be coming through and funneling through to get to those bigger blocks. And I'm just there when they happen to funnel through, traveling between those two bigger blocks. And sometimes I've got some properties that are 40, 50 acres a piece, and it's doing somewhat of similar, but I'm still having to kind of go to the bigger bigger spots like hardwood ridges or going into funnels where there's a lot of bedding or really, really thick stuff. And then versus that to public land or just bigger thousands of acres, that goes to back to my roots of hunting Kentucky and hunting Illinois and just hunting the Midwest states that I've have. Just hunting all the crops and CRP and hardwood ridges. I'm looking at big ridges that I know deer are going to be funneling through or passing by, looking for a lot of oaks, a lot of sign. This time of year, I really try and key in on food sources and water, because if I can find does this time of year, I know bucks are going to be in the area. I know they're going to be cruising through. And I always really, really enjoy getting on a ridge where I know there's either one bedding on one side or bedding on both sides, where it's just a big ridge and it's just super, super thick bottoms. If I can do that, those are my key features that I look for on public or bigger blocks of woods.
All right. So on the smaller ones, are you having to, because what I've noticed, so I've got 2 spots. One's 1 acre, one's 7 acres. On the 1 acre spot, I have literally a power line that I have to put food out or they don't even show up. Right. And even like you were saying, like right now, focusing on food sources and stuff, dude, I don't know what's going on with these deer, but I could put anything out and I know it's the rut. I know they're moving. I'll get the same 4 does every single evening, starting at like 6 o'clock till about 8. And then after that, it's maybe a trickle of a couple deer and that's it, which is not normal for that property. But I know that they're all running each other around right now. I mean, what are you using on the smaller spots that's like, okay, I've got 5 acres. How am I going to get this big mature deer to show up?
It's a lot of the stuff I pretty much do. I don't know if you've seen it up there at the shop before or not, but the cob corn, we've got it like it's a cob corn now, 32-pound bags. I normally run 2 or 3 bags of that, and then I'll put two bags of Atrax out. So it's lasting. It's lasting more, a lot longer. In that with the cob corn, they can't really just sit there and go little pieces. They have to stand there and chew on that one cob.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I've noticed is since using that, it's kept them around longer and kept them on camera longer. But I feel like right now, and I'm kind of running the same issue as well as you are, it doesn't really matter what I'm putting out right now. I feel like it's the weather. They're just acting really, really strange. I feel like the weather's playing a big key part. And I'm not saying that they're not bumping around or they're not pushing, because I've seen it already by myself. I think the weather's playing a big part with just how it went from being bone dry to now it's hot or humid and it's just raining outside. So I feel like maybe here in about a week or so, once it cools off and this rain moves through, I feel like it'll really, really start to kick in good.
Yeah, I'm hoping so, man. Because so I didn't get to hunt last weekend because we went up to North Carolina, and everybody was sending photo, and I don't know what it was. I guess because it's the first weekend of like the rut, right? Because everybody says the first weekend of November. I have not personally had good luck in the rut, and this is probably the most depressing time of my season, because the things I was doing a month ago, I can't even get I've got one young buck that shows up and that's it.
Yeah.
And
yes.
So I agree with you that I think the weather is playing a huge, huge factor, because it went from 40s. I mean, hell, dude, 2 weeks ago we were in the 30s. And now this morning it was 61.
Different a little bit.
Yeah, dude, the last year when I shot my doe, I was shivering for an hour straight before she showed up. Yeah. And now it's like when I go hunt this weekend, I'm gonna be back in early season gear, not cold at all. And it's just weird. So I think you're right. I mean, it was supposed to be a cold front this weekend, and then that changed.
Yeah, they put it out farther. Hey, weatherman only has to be probably 50% of the time. So
yeah, well, he ain't doing too hot. He's not doing too good this year.
And I really, I really and truly think it's that time of year where it's going to be a lot harder to get those bucks more consistently like we were 2 weeks ago and even a week ago camera like we have been, because I really think that all those does they're first starting to come into heat are finally starting to pop. And it doesn't matter if they're a mile or if they're 100 yards, them bucks are going to be going to those does.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like at this point it's just being in a tree, because it can be 90 degrees outside. If that one hot doe comes by your tree, she can walk by the camera or not. It's just being in the tree at this point, I think.
How much faith do you put into like the rut forecast maps? Because I used to use that as like gospel, and now it's like ain't no way.
I try and stick to what my dad always taught me, because what he showed me always kind of played out very true. I think in Georgia, probably in middle Georgia, around the areas that we're hunting, the best time where the rut's really kicking in good is between the 12th and 13th. So those are my favorite days to hunt, the 12th, 13th, and 14th. But in Midwest states right now, it's ramping up and it's getting there. So,
and I can definitely, I guess, what's the word? Agree with that, I guess. Mainly because I've got photos last year from public land where this extremely wide buck daylighted 2 days after the season ended, and he daylighted on the 15th. And last archery season there on public, last year was what was it? The 9th through 11th. And I didn't see anything. Granted, it was raining, which is kind of crazy. So that is 2 years in a row now that we've had heavy rain on that weekend.
Yeah.
Or in that small time frame,
Yeah.
Like we're supposed to get a little bit of rain this weekend. I'm really hoping that when the temperatures go a little bit lower and the rain's already gone, they get a break from it, that they're going to either, which I know some people say that when the rut starts, they stop hitting scrapes. I somewhat believe that, and I somewhat don't. I think that either this weekend for the does that, for the areas that it got started earlier, like late October, I think we're going to start hitting that post rut movement, because I use a lot of different things like onX, DeerCast, and I kind of just put it all together. Well, DeerCast is saying in Monticello and in Covington that it's going to be like a buck parade. That's their phase. It's like phase 9 or something like that. And for me, that means, okay, well, these bucks are going to just be cruising through. You hit the bleat can, you can call in 5 bucks, but it's also warm. So we're kind of dealing with like a weird situation here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how much merit do you give your cameras? Because I've been having this argument with a lot of my buddies over the past week and a half. Once everything went dead, I'm over here sitting like, well, you guys are seeing deer, but I'm not seeing anything. You know what I mean? Like, do you use camera data as like the most important thing, or are you kind of just using it as part of the strategy to either catch them or try to pattern when you should be in there?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Yes, trying to pattern them to when to be in there. It's just trying to pattern does, get does on camera right now, find out when does are coming in. And some spots are, I don't know if you've had this or not on some of your spots this year, but a lot of the spots I found this year are super, super hard to get into in the mornings. Like I remember the last time I've hunted the morning. I think it was beginning of October, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I would personally rather just slip in there super early in the afternoon and just sit the whole afternoon right now instead of go in there in the morning and blow deer out in the dark.
Yep. It's been almost impossible for me.
Yeah.
Like,
and I
got lucky on that doe. That's other than that, every morning I've only done 3 morning hunts, and the first one blew a deer out of there. Second one killed that doe. And then the third one, I actually did see deer. It was Friday the 25th. I saw
Okay.
a deer, no bucks, but it was very tough to get in there without busting anything. So
Yeah.
I have noticed that, which it's never been that way before, at least that I can
And
remember.
that's one thing I've noticed a lot of this year is with me working at the shop and everything. I can actually send you pictures. I had a buddy with me. I went and picked him up first thing in the morning, like at 5 o'clock, because we were gonna go throw corn out. And I checked my phone when we pulled up to the property, and one of the bucks that I've got on camera was standing at the corn. So we had to
Mm,
sit in the truck for 15 minutes until that deer finally walked out and left. And we run in there, put corn out, and left. And he was back in there at daylight at 8 o'clock that morning.
hmm.
And it's just, it's been really weird for mornings for me this year, just trying to get in. In some spots, I've got like one spot that I've got on a big ridge between two swamps. I've got a just a big old hardwood ridge between two swamps, and I can slip in there pretty easy in the
Mhm.
mornings. Now, granted, it's hit or miss in that spot. Sometimes I'll see a bunch of deer. Sometimes I won't see anything.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of playing the cards that you're dealt with right now, just with the weather and everything that's going on.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of like deer biologists and stuff will say, I mean, I saw Lindsey Thomas a couple days ago make a post on the Deer Association, and
Yeah.
he was saying like even if it's hot, they're still gonna rut. They're gonna rut, but it's
Oh yeah.
most likely gonna be most movement is gonna be at nighttime. And
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people, myself included, will give these deer way more credit than they deserve because they only need three things. But it's just one of those things where on at face value you can say that, but I can firmly tell you that some deer I've been hunting this year know when I'm in there, and I don't know how. And people say bedding, people say this, but it's like, dude, I know the area. I I really don't know how they're figuring this out. So I don't know. I'm with you, man. It's been a really weird year. Evenings have been way more fruitful for me than anything, which is
Yeah.
normal, I guess. But like, I used to hunt mornings all the time, and now I have done only 3 morning hunts, and I've seen deer every single time. But it's just like I don't know. It's like they're sticking around more, and at least on my spots, they're figuring out like, okay, this dude's coming in at you know this amount of time before daylight. So I'm going to be in there at 6 because he gets here at 6:30. You know, it's weird.
And I will personally say from last year to this year, last year mornings for me were absolutely on fire.
Yeah.
Last year, I could go into certain spots that I'd have, and I don't, I can't remember if it was middle of October or beginning of October last year, but we had a really, really big cold front come in, and it dropped high 30s, low 40s right there, beginning to mid October. I
Mm-hmm.
saw 28 deer in one morning, and I'm I'm lucky to see that now. And some mornings, I'm lucky to see 10 some mornings now.
Hmm.
And that spot there, I actually still have permission to that, and it's just like you just flipped a switch and just the numbers went to absolutely nothing in there. I'll go in there and see maybe 4, 5 deer at
Yeah.
most, compared to what I'd see 15 to 20 last year. So
So do you think that that's pressure related, or do you think that that's just because as we all know, deer do change their patterns, they do shift areas. The one thing that I've always banked on, as far as like, say, okay, I'll use trike as an example. I know that early season from opening or really all summer long till probably the last, I'd say, week of October, he is in there consistently. As soon as he starts to really start rutting and finds that first hot doe, he's gone for a week or two. And
yeah,
he started doing it a little earlier this year, but I also know from last year that he was gone for 2 weeks, came back, and was in there every single night. Now, at that point, he had shed aside. So hopefully this year he doesn't do that. but
Yeah.
I think he was just young and dumb and rutting so hard that he just didn't he never came to eat. And what's crazy is he's kind of doing the same thing again this year. But he was there consistently. And so it kind of leads me to think like, okay, and that's why I haven't totally given up yet, because we still have a month and a half left. Or really, we
Oh,
actually have 2 months left. And
yeah.
I know that at the end of this month, they're really going to start hitting food sources again. And
Yes.
I'm just kind of hoping that that's where we can get back on them and be like, okay, they're back. Let's
And
go.
and let me cut in on that real quick. I actually noticed in past years that I've noticed a lot more rutting activity, like personal rutting activity, where I'm watching bucks fighting and chasing towards the end of the
Mhm.
month more than I have at the beginning of the month.
Hmm.
I'll have a lot. I'll say this between, like I told you earlier, 12th, 13th, and 14th in that area. I almost every single time I could check my cameras and I will have every single camera go off and have daylight pictures of bucks. And they'll be eating. They'll be at corn. They'll be
Yeah.
eating corn. They'll stand there 30, 40 minutes. Towards the end of the month, I'll notice a lot of times that they're not even, they'll walk right by corn.
Yeah.
They'll walk, look for does, no does. They keep on cruising.
Hmm.
And some of it, I feel like it's really the area that you go into.
Yep.
Because, heck, I think I actually called you the night it happened when I watched Tex and that other buck get into a fight. It was middle of October.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that
And
call.
they weren't even sparring. It was a full on fight for a good 30, 45 seconds. I thought a tree was coming down when they started to fight. And hey, I I will say one thing. Me in that saddle, I like to say I look like a monkey trying to swing around that tree, but it probably looked like a bear up in that tree trying. Hey, I was doing everything I could to try and get a shot on one of the two of those deer, but this
Yeah.
just
Well, okay, let's look. I wanna transition a little bit because there's a couple things that I want to talk about. The first one being, can you tell the story for everybody listening of what happened to you like 3 weeks ago when you called me and you and I both were on like a super high of high, and then after 5 minutes, just completely devastated? You don't have to name names, just what happened.
yes. So I was hunting a spot that I got on the river, and actually, I think I told you the after part of it. I was hunting a spot on the river with one of my good buddies. Um, we were sitting there, and it was a super super slow evening. We saw one good buck right at the beginning. Soon as we climbed in, and then it was absolutely dead. Like it was 7 o'clock, and I turned and I just looked to my right out of the tree, and there's like 150-inch 10 point just walking straight at us, like 50 yards. And it was the weirdest thing because I looked and it was just almost motion, just reached, grabbed my bow, said, "Deer coming, don't move," and just swung around the tree. And we were hunting, he's hunting out of a saddle as well. And we were hunting in a probably not the best tree for two people to hunt in, but
Mhm.
we were making it work the best way we could. And I swung and got turned around how I needed to, and deer came in. Deer was 20 yards, if that. I shot and absolutely thought I smoked the deer and called a dog. Dog run 500-600 yards. And at that point, we were getting farther and farther away from my property, which I had permission for about 4 or 5 houses to track. And I didn't want to go too much farther. And I just said, let's just call it. I'm going to come back in the morning. And as I was pulling out of the driveway of the person's house, I went up the road just a little bit and looked into a neighboring yard. There was two does standing there. And I just looked because I saw some more movement and shined a flashlight. And the deer that I had shot was standing there with the two does. And I went, oh, well, cool. He's still alive. I didn't think anything of it. And I was like, great. So I called my buddy who was with me and said, hey, that deer's still alive. I just saw him. So I was sitting there and just driving home. I'm like, all right, cool. Deer's still alive. I'll get another chance at him. And I called you the next morning. I was thinking about going and knocking on some doors. And the lady of that property called me and said, hey, I know that you shot a deer last night. I don't know if this is even relevant to you, but there's a bunch of buzzards circling over a block of woods in the neighborhood. And I immediately called you back and told you, and I was like, I don't think, but I got a really, really good feeling about it. It would be super weird after seeing him alive and standing with does probably an hour and a half after I shot him. And I was thinking, okay, I maybe had a one lung partial hit and he finally bedded up and died somewhere. So I started going around knocking on doors. And finally, the one door that answered, I asked the people, I said, hey, I just kind of explained to them what was going on. And they said, well, a deer died in our yard late last night. We called our friend that hunts, and he came and got the deer. And I asked them, I said, do y'all have a picture of the deer? And they showed the picture of the deer, and I am almost certain that it was the same deer that I had shot. And they called the guy, and I was trying to talk to the guy, and I asked him, I was like, hey, is there any way you could bring that deer back by chance? And he just said, I'm going to be honest, I've never seen a deer this big. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep it. And that was really that. I couldn't do anything farther. I couldn't look at the owners because they gave permission to that guy to come get the deer off the property. And losing that deer kind of hurt because he may have pushed my biggest deer. He was close to it. But it was just kind of a slap in the face of where's the camaraderie between other hunters and the fellowship of you've got another guy or a younger guy, a younger generation that's trying to just have the next generation of hunters, and he shoots a really big deer, and you just turn around and say, no, you're not getting this deer. I want it. And it really opened my eyes to certain things nowadays because we're all supposed to be on a team. We're all supposed to be one team. When we start kind of splitting up and doing stuff like that and tearing other hunters down about deer they shoot, if it makes you happy, awesome. I don't care what you shoot. If you wrap your tag around it and it makes you smile, awesome. And it really opened my eyes about just hunting suburban necessarily of possibilities of other things that could happen. And there's been times where I've had buddies that shot deer and they run onto people's property and they would try and go get permission. Those people would say, absolutely not. And deer would just have to sit there and rot and just be destroyed on that property. And a lot of times that my buddies, they would have that happen. They'd call game wardens, say, hey, is there anything? Game wardens just say, if they said no, there's absolutely nothing we can do. Because they're going to tell the thing and we can't go on. That's trespassing. And I think that's a really, really weird law to have, because if you know for certain that deer's dead on their property or anything like that, maybe the person not saying yes to you going on, but at least a game warden. Even if you don't, even if like the game warden comes and gets the deer and donates the meat or something, I personally think that would be better instead of letting the deer just rot and just having nothing done with it.
Yeah, I mean that, dude, when you told me that story, I was so mad. Like I said some things I'm not proud of.
Remember me? I was just morally in disbelief at the time than I could be mad at anything.
It goes to say, like, it goes to show that, you know, the whole, like on this podcast, I try to have it where we're unified, right? Like I'll have crossbow hunters on, I'll have gun hunters on. I know it's called Southeastern bow hunter, but that's what I am. I don't hunt with a gun. I don't hunt with a crossbow, but I'll still listen to people talk about it. And like,
absolutely.
I just don't understand though. I can't wrap my head around it because the guy, even if the guy's a hunter, and that makes it even worse if he is like, what are you going to do with that rack? Are you going to mount it and you're going to tell people that come to your house, oh yeah, I shot that buck, you know, over in such and such, and you never actually shot it. You just basically stole it from
Yeah.
somebody? Or are you just going to look
Yep.
at it and be like, wow, that's a really big deer. I want to actually kill one like that. Because, I mean, dude, I have this mount right here next to me. You can't see it in here, but it's probably a
Yeah.
130-inch 9 point. It
Yep.
was a gift that my parents got me when I was like 10 years old. And I don't look at
Yeah.
it like people have asked, like family members have come down here and seen like the whole setup. Like I got pickles there, I got another buck over here, got this buck over here. And they'll ask me, "Oh, is that your biggest?" And I'm like, "No." And I was like, "That's a gift. It came out of a longhorn over in Buford." Like it's like literally like look, I'll show you. For the people that are watching this, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. It's this deer right here. That's a good deer, but it's not. I'm not going to claim it as something I shot just to feed my ego.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. That whole situation, because I've heard of stuff like this. I've heard of people stealing things. Um, that that is the first time I've ever actually known somebody that's gone through it. And I mean, I'll tell you right now, if I was standing there with you at the homeowner's place, I would have
Yep.
taken that phone from you and been like, bro, come over here. I got some words to say to you. Like, this is ridiculous. You don't do this. Be a man about it. You didn't kill this deer. Hell, if you want to hunt over here, obviously there's deer like this. Come and ask for permission. If you're friends with these
Yeah.
people, come do it the right way.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
just
Exactly.
God, it pisses me off.
And I saw a story a few years ago. A guy killed a deer out. I think it may have been Iowa, but a
Mhm.
guy killed a deer. A neighbor had been hunting for a super, super long time. And guy shot the deer and it run and died on the neighbor's property, right? I guarantee you can look this up, but the guy that shot the deer called the game warden and everything. Game warden ended up showing up to the guy's house. The guy had went and got the deer out of the woods and everything. And the guy looked at the game warden and said, if I can't have this deer, nobody can. He went and got a chainsaw and cut the rack into pieces because he was that upset and just that selfish because he didn't get to shoot the deer and somebody else did. And he
Dude,
wanted
big
to
bucks.
go
Big
back.
bucks do weird things to people. Like
Oh, absolutely.
God, man, that
It's like that one guy from Ohio that killed that
CJ.
one. Yep.
Yeah, dude, I've talked about that so many times on this podcast. You don't want me to go down that rabbit hole. You really
But
don't.
you know what
We'll be here
about?
till midnight.
But yeah. And
Oh man.
I've hunted Nashville and other states, hunted other suburban areas. They'll tell you, they're like, dude, keep your mouth shut on if you find big deer, because
Yep.
people will literally go in there and poach deer. They will literally do it without even thinking twice about it.
Oh yeah.
And it really makes me think of why can you just not go knock on a door? Why can you not just go do it the right way? Ask for permission. Why do you have to go poach a deer? Or why it just really it baffles me at times on what
It's just,
people just for a deer.
yeah, it's kind of the bad side of what has become of the hunting industry because
Yep.
everybody wants to kill a big deer. I mean, dude, I want to kill a Papillon,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know, like I want to do it, but I'm going to do it the right way. You know,
Yes.
I mean, believe me, if I wanted to kill trike, I had plenty of opportunities during the off season in the summertime, and I have places I could go that they wouldn't say anything. But I'm not going to do that.
Oh.
That I will not shoot a deer illegally, and
No.
I can't wrap my head around why anybody would. I actually know. I'm not going to say names. I'm not going to say names, but I know of a situation where this dude is on a club and has shot 3 bucks. Now you tell me what's wrong with that.
There's a
Mhm.
lot.
There's a lot.
And
It gets
I will
worse.
personally say that too. That's another reason why I chose to go to suburban properties is me and my dad, my dad's thing was turkey hunting through and through. My dad was best friends with Eddie Salter. I've got Eddie's number. I
Wow.
still talk to Eddie to this day. Was turkey hunting, and my dad would it's harder to hunt on smaller tracks for turkeys. You need bigger properties. Now, granted, yes, you can kill turkeys on smaller tracks. I've done it, but it's a lot easier when you've got 100, 200, 300 acres to go hunt. And we would get into clubs just to turkey hunt, and we would go down there just to hang out and just have fellowship with other guys in the club. I cannot tell you how many times I would see guys, and I'm not knocking these guys at all, but I watched a guy in one night. He came back up to camp with 4 deer, all spikes or forkhorn deer, all of them. And somebody, I can't remember who, somebody cracked a joke, said, "Man, you're double tagged out." He said, "I'm not tagging any of these deer. I'm going to kill 2 big ones and tag them."
Yep.
And I just thought, I'm like, had you just waited and maybe just shot one of those instead of all 4, maybe you would have had an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I just looked at my dad, and my dad just said, "That's normal, bud." He said, "That's normal for clubs." He said, "That's why we really don't." He said, "That's why we go to Kentucky or go out of state to hunt. And we've got these bigger tracks because it's just me and you, and we can do it how we want to do. We don't have to worry about anybody else."
Yeah.
And everybody in the Midwest states really and truly has that same mindset necessarily of, we're not going to shoot 3, 4, 5 little spikes or forkhorns. They're all trying to kill 140, 150, if not bigger deer.
Yeah.
So they all do the genetics in the area.
Yeah.
And it's just, it kind of baffles me at things I've seen and heard about.
My problem with it is like, so this was the argument I had, was you've got guys paying to be there, and the thing is, the owners don't know about this. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went off and killed really 3 young bucks. One of them's decent, and not you, but this guy. I just want to clarify that. It sounded a little bad. But yeah, like this dude shot 3 bucks that are young, and he did end up tagging 2 of them. But what you just did is you took away from A, the future of the property, and B, from other hunters that if their kid came with and wanted to shoot their first buck, that buck could have been it. And instead you just were trigger happy. Now, one of the situations I do know, it was kind of not mistaken identity, but one of those like, oh, I thought he was much bigger when I shot him. But still, dude, it's just, there's so many things that are happening right now in the hunting world that are kind of pissing me off, and that's one of them. Another one that I want to touch on. What's your opinion? And this has been a very, very hot topic, and I want to kind of close this episode with this, because it's going to be, there's a chance it can be a long conversation part or a long conversation point, or we could just nip it really quickly and then move on to something else. But I want to hear what you think.
Okay.
What's your opinion of, if you call a dog and the tracker shows up, he's got his dog, got his dogs, whatever.
Yeah.
And you start tracking and he's got a rifle with him. And the intent is, if those dogs pull up on that deer and the deer is not dead, that he's the one that's going to put the deer down. Because I have a story for you that I saw on Facebook, that this guy shot a deer in the leg. And you probably know which story I'm talking about, but this guy shot a deer in the leg, called a tracking dog, and then the tracker ended up hitting the deer. What the hell?
Yep.
Like, I mean,
okay.
what's your thoughts?
There's a few.
I have my.
All right. I've got a few different thoughts with that. I've got a few friends. I even have my own tracking dogs. Bo, come here. See, I've got a big old chocolate lab.
Oh, look at him.
He is my tracking dog. He's a duck dog. He's practically my kid. When in trackers, guys that have dogs that track and everything understand the same thing. And I've got buddies that will do it. I take him on just to have fun, just to, when we're not duck hunting or anything, just so he can get out and kind of get some energy out. I've watched some guys where a guy shot a deer in the ankle or in the leg, like you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was running 2 dogs. Those dogs bayed that deer up in a creek. That deer would have been perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
That deer survived. And it was a buck. And once they got there, and the guy realized, because the buck was sitting there trying to charge the dogs, he realized that his dogs were either one about to get gored,
Mm-hmm.
or they were going to grab a hold of that deer, and they were not going to come off that deer no matter what. So he got into the situation where, okay, it's either the deer or my dogs, and obviously he chose it was going to be the deer.
Oh, of course.
And he gave the guy the choice. He said, "Do you want to shoot the deer? Do you want me to shoot it?" Because the dogs, he could get the dogs to come back about 10 foot off the deer, and the deer would just stand still. The guy just said, "No, you shoot the deer." And my buddy, he told me, he said, there was nothing within a foot and a half of that deer that would have made that a fatal shot.
Yeah.
He said that deer would have been perfectly fine. He said, had I could have called my dogs off, I would have. He said, but just with the situation at hand where the dogs had the deer bayed up, and it's just the possibility of those dogs getting gored, which I don't know if you know Brandon Hightower. His dog gored here recently as well.
Mm-hmm.
My other buddy, Caleb Crawford.
I know. Caleb helped me and Josh find that buck that we tracked, what was it, like a month ago?
Yeah,
and
Caleb.
Same thing. He had a gun with him too, and I was kind of like, okay. I mean, I'm not going to tell him not to. And
that's not necessarily if the deer's still alive, I'm going to shoot the deer. This is morally, and I asked him, because he was the guy I called for that deer, right? That I had to come track.
Yeah.
And he had it, and it's just a little 17 HMR, I think it was, is what he was toting. He said, I will be completely honest with you. He said, I would rather shoot the deer, put the deer down, if it's just a bad shot or anything, instead of take the chance of my dog getting gored or get killed. And I truly understood that, and I respected it, because when you step out of that truck and you cut your dogs loose to go, you know what the chances are of anything to happen. Deer could be laying dead 150 yards, or the deer could just be bedded down alive, and then dogs run up on a deer that's wounded, and that deer is fixing to turn and gore one or two of those dogs.
Yeah, well, one of Caleb's dogs got gored recently.
Yeah, got gored. I think she's backtracking. Caleb's in Kansas right now, and I think he has Shine with him. I'm not positive.
Okay.
But he's
okay. All right. So this is why I brought it up, because it's going away I didn't expect it to. Right?
Yeah.
You're making me think about my original opinion, because the way that it was presented to me was, you've got these guys out here that are shooting the deer with a 243 super light bullet. I mean, honestly, it's kind of the equivalent of us shooting, I feel 60 pounds with a sub 350 arrow, like you're not adequately equipped to do what you need to do.
No.
You know what I'm saying? So how it was presented to me was, if you shoot a deer with a low caliber or bad shot with an arrow, or bad shot in general, right? And you call the dog, and the guy's got a gun with him, and he goes and finds the deer, and you're with him, but he goes and finds the deer, and the situation of, okay, this deer's not going to gore these dogs. The deer's perfectly fine, but it's just kind of, freaked out, right? Like, it's not going anywhere, and the guy just puts the deer down. Yeah. I have a problem with that. But if there's a chance of the dogs getting hurt, 100%. Deer goes down before the dogs do every single time.
Yeah.
So me and my buddies were talking about, having a conversation with the DNR and sort of trying to figure out, because the thing is that we've been seeing a lot more of this lately this year, where guys are posting stuff and saying, oh, so-and-so helped me track, and then he put the deer down and made this shot, and I feel like there should be some sort of, there's got to be a way for the situations where it's not a lethal hit, and you can still get those dogs out of there without just straight up killing the deer. You know what I mean? But I'm also not a tracker, so I don't know.
And and going off of what you just said, giving the deer a fair chance. If you see the hit and you know it's not a lethal shot, if you can see that it's just it clipped its leg or it clipped its back or something, and you know it's not going to be a lethal hit, finding a way to get your dogs out of there if there's no chance of the dogs getting gored, getting your dogs out of there and giving that deer a fair chance, because deer are extremely tough.
Yeah.
I've got a doe right now. I swear that she got hit by a car. Her back leg is just mangled, and I've seen her multiple times. She is hopping around like no problem. She's just stumbling around on three legs like there's no issue at all. And I feel like people don't give deer enough credit at times when, oh, well, I shot low. That deer's not going to live. It's just going to go die somewhere. It's going to bed up and die. If you shoot them right there on the belly and you just clip them and you just cut the skin really, and there's no arteries or anything like that around there, that deer 90% of the time is probably going to live unless they get an infection or just something bizarre. Because I'm sure you've seen it looking at bucks when they get into fights or they get stabbed. I've never seen it, but I've seen posts on Instagram. Deer will kill a deer, or people will kill a deer, and there will be points broken off or part of it broke off in the deer's neck or shoulder or something. They are extremely tough.
Well, look at the doe that I shot last year. That I shot her directly in the shoulder blade. She has been consistent. If anything, she's the most consistent deer that I've got on camera right now, because she's a solid. She's over 200 pounds. I mean, I'll send you a photo of her right now. But this chick is fat, and I've seen her multiple times, and she walks with a limp. She's got a scar where I shot her, so I named her Scarlet. Scar for short. And I mean, dude, I remember shooting that deer, and I remember where my pin was. And the only reason that deer is still alive is because the arrow broke. But because I was using a piece of crap. But yeah. I've talked about it enough on here. I'm not going to name drop anybody, but it's one of those things where I really thought she was going to die. And then 2 weeks later, she shows up and she's perfectly fine. She's got the scar on her shoulder. She's eating, and she's stuck around all year. So, I mean, deer are much more resilient than we give them credit for. I just feel like the guys that shoot them in the leg, dude, if you know that it was a bad shot. And the thing is, so this I think, okay, so I have another argument for this. When Caleb came out, I asked him, I said, how are you tracking these deer? Are you tracking from the blood, or are they putting down some sort of scent? And he told me that when a deer is vitally hit, they have it's called the death pheromone, is what he called it. Yeah. The way I'm looking at it is, if you've got a dog that should be well trained, you got a tracker that knows what they're doing. Yeah. If that dog gets on a trail and sticks to the trail, that deer is going to die. It is, to make it simple. I'm sure there's situations where that's not the case, but to make it simple, if that dog, starts hitting the track and he's just going, okay, that deer's probably dead somewhere. But I don't understand how these guys are getting these deer that are shot in the leg that aren't going to die. Is it just they put that pheromone out when they get hit, and then the dogs think that they're going to die?
Yes and no. And there's a gland in deer's hooves. Yeah. That's the pheromone that dogs are tracking. They're not tracking off blood. They're tracking off that pheromone. It's like a waxy white substance in the hooves. And each deer has a different, I guess, pheromone. So, I mean, it's like all of pretty much. We all have a different little bit of smell. So when you shoot a deer, I mean, obviously the dog, if there's been a pile of deer in there and that dog hits on one trail, yes, I will say I've seen it help where there was blood and the dog was tracking on blood as well, but they were also going off the smell of the pheromone coming out of the hoofs and from the gland. So I don't necessarily, I'm not disagreeing with what Caleb said, but I also think that each deer has its own scent per se that those dogs are tracking. Because if every deer smelled the exact same and there was no blood, dogs would be they'd get on a deer trail and they could run for as long as they wanted to.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of to each deer.
I think the argument was just that us as hunters need to be better prepared and make better shots. I mean, granted,
Yeah.
I've made bad shots. I lost a doe this year from a bad shot. I'm no better than the next guy, right? But I just feel like if you know for a fact it's a bad shot, do not call a dog. Just let that deer go. If you know they're going to survive, don't waste the time. Because what could happen is if you do that, that dog could find that deer and that dog could get killed. And now you're the reason why that dog's dead.
Yes.
So,
and I will say one thing that I've noticed a lot of times, Eric, is I've watched it happen. Just heat of the moment, you think you made a good shot, you shot the deer low and in the leg. I've noticed this every single time. When you get on it, it's bright red blood. You're thinking, oh, this great shot, everything. You get going 150, 200 yards, it just stops.
Yep.
Dead stop. And I've looked at my buddies before and I said, you shot them low in the leg. It's not, that deer is hitting the leg. And sure enough, like you said, they show up a week or two later and you can see where they hit them every time. And it is super confusing because you would see blood like that and you're like, oh, this deer smoked.
mm-hmm.
And sure enough, nothing. And with the deer I shot, there was little to no blood at all.
Yeah.
And it was the strangest thing because sometimes when you hit them, best shot you could ever put on a deer, sometimes they don't bleed at all. And I feel like that also comes down to the broadhead that you could be using.
Yeah.
What broadheads are you shooting this year?
I'm kind of doing a mix. So I've got VPAs, Mega Meats, and Beast.
Okay.
I'm sort of testing all those out. I have shot one with the VPA, and that one I think was the bad shot. I haven't had an opportunity to test that one out again.
Okay.
It was full pass through, and like legitimate full pass through.
Yeah.
But the blood trail was not that good.
Okay.
And then, and I'm pretty sure that I hit liver. I mean, if I sent you a photo of the arrows, you could probably tell me like, oh yeah, that's liver. And then the deer that I killed was actually with the beast head, and that was another full pass through, and she died within 30 seconds, 30 yards away. So,
Yeah.
But the blood trail, I will tell you, when I shot her, she ducked and turned. Like if you look at the entry, that's not where I was aiming at.
Yeah.
And so like you can see where it shaved the hair off going in, opened up, and then just straight through. And I watched it fall. But the blood trail it was better, but it wasn't like what I've had with the Mega Meats in the past where you shoot them and it's just pumping blood everywhere. So,
and I'll say this. I've shot the broadheads the heads I'm shooting this year are the Swacker, the 261s, the Levi Morgans, the T2s by G5, and then I'm going to try out the Beast broadheads.
mm-hmm.
I'm a two, always have been. It's what I've noticed. It's what I like and what works best for me. And
Seems to work
I've noticed.
Well.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. The Swackers, even with them being a front deploying head, I've gotten better blood trails with those than I have any other heads at times. Almost every deer I've shot so far this year that I've killed, I've watched fall, or they run 10 yards farther than what I could see and fell over.
Yeah.
And every time my arrow would be solid red, covered in blood, and just look like you had a paint can and you just walked to the deer.
What's
and
so
you'd have
funny
about
about
an
this,
inch
dude?
entry window.
Every time we talk, every single time this comes up, you always, Schwacker is in Covington. You might need to walk in there and say, hey guys, go listen to this podcast. Listen to what I'm saying. Because no, I mean, look, I have said for years, I'm not a fan of the front deploying. But I'm saying that based off of things that like T-Bone has said, other people have said. I've never shot one. And so I do plan on next year trying them out just for fun and to see if I like them. because I'm open to using it, but
And this is the thing that scares people. With my setup, I don't run a regular setup. I'm running a 31-inch draw length at 82 pounds. I don't have to worry about not getting a pass through. I know I'm getting a pass through every single time. But for the regular guys running 27, 28-inch draw, 60, 65 pounds, sometimes you would possibly, am I going to not get a pass through?
yeah,
And you're like, okay, what I'm going to get is a 1-inch cut. That's all I get. But with that, it's almost what I try and relate it to is you're hitting them with a fixed head. And then every bit of kinetic energy is opening up inside of that deer versus with the rear deploying, it's opening on the outside, it's opening on the inside. And that's why I like those heads as much as I do. It's because I get that much more kinetic energy going through a deer.
I think if Schwacker came out with the design that was like the Beast. So the thing about the Beast that I like, and I know people are going to listen to this like, oh, Josh Bomar, he's, poacher, blah, blah, whatever. I don't care. I've listened to Bomar talk about it. If I ever get him on here, I'm going to have him just sort of brush over it a bit and shut everybody up, because the dude's a good dude. I mean, he knows how to market. He knows what he's doing. He's killed more 200-inch deer than anybody I know personally. And the broadhead's a great design. Now, look,
Absolutely.
I'm partnered up with BPA. I still think that if you want penetration and you want a broadhead that will not break, BPA is the way to go. I've never broken one.
Yes.
I've never had an issue with them. My only problem on a small property is I just don't make good enough shots to be using a small head like that. That's the only reason I'm even shooting a mechanical when I go hunt a small property. Public land, different story. But like the Beast head, the thing about it, going back to that I like the most is when, and I'm sure you've seen the video, but that broadhead, if it hits heavy bone, no matter what angle, those blades are still going to compress in, and then they're going to pop back out.
I love that.
And if Schwacker came out with something like that, they would defeat the penetration problem, because you could have it go in, open inside the animal, and say you hit some ribs. If those blades, and I know it'd probably be really hard to do. I'm sure they could figure it out though. If you can get those blades to open up and then say you hit, like, it's at an angle, right? You're going through and it hits 2 ribs and they compress in. And then as soon as you get past those ribs, pops back out.
Yes.
I think it'd be one of the best heads on the market.
Oh, absolutely. And it would be crazy to see what type of blood trails and just how much penetration you would get with that head.
It'd be comparable to the Beast. The Beast was buried in the dirt. Like literally, dude, when I pulled that arrow out of the dirt, the broadhead was completely covered. And that's what's crazy is a 2-inch mechanical. And I'm really not trying to sound like I'm bashing BPA, because I'm not, because it was 2 completely different shots. But the fixed blade, when it went through, it somehow had deflected, because it went straight through her. And I've got lighted knock, so I was able to see all of this. It went straight through the deer, and then I watched that knock go in. And when it came out, the knock was popped to the right, and it landed horizontal. The Beast didn't do that. The Beast went straight through her. And when I walked up there, the arrow is sticking up like this, and the broadhead is completely covered in dirt. And it's like, I don't know what happened there, but I found one deer. I didn't find the other.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that I hit ribs, and that Beast did its job. So that's a big thing that I now, after shooting that, thinking about, Schwacker, G5, none of these other companies have. Sever is the only other one I know of that if you hit rib, the blades react to it and allow better penetration. Other than that, everybody else is just trying to push their way through it. And again, they work. I mean, the Megameat is still the most devastating broadhead I've ever seen, but it's just there's improvements that can be made, So I'm hoping that we get to see that. I'm still waiting for a collarless Megameat to come out that has like rib
Ooh,
deflecting
I
technology,
want to see
what they want to call it.
what they're doing with the T2, that socket design. I do want to see that with the Mega Meat. I really, really do.
I
That
think they'll do it.
oh,
We're getting away from collars and all that other stuff. Like they worked, they had their time, but the only and I'll say this, I've said this before, you know this. The only reason that I even switched to a fixed blade was because a Mega Meat opened prematurely and I gut shot a doe last year. And it only opened prematurely because I didn't change the collar. But if that collar wasn't there and it had a ball and socket system,
yes.
would have had no problem. So
No, I agree with you completely on that.
yeah, there's improvements that could be made. I mean, I have thought about going up to Schwacker just literally 20 minutes from my house and walking in and saying, hey, I run this podcast. Who can I talk to about designs? Because I've got a bunch of buddies that shoot this. I've shot other heads. And Levi was at the shop like a few months ago. If I had the opportunity to talk to him about it, I would have. I got there 5 minutes too late. So that sucked.
Just both him and Hank. And
Yeah.
both of them have heads by Swacker. Hank has the 125 grain 2 1/4 inch cut. Levi's got the sweatback 2 inch cut.
Yeah.
So
I just feel like there's things we could do to sort of bridge the gap between the argument of mechanicals don't penetrate and fixed blades do, but mechanicals have a bigger cut and fixed blades don't. You could find a way to bridge that and have it where they do both.
And granted, yes and no, because I truly feel like it's all going to come down to the setup that you're
True.
shooting as well. Because
Well, I'm thinking for the average guy.
yeah, and absolutely, I probably wouldn't recommend it, but I shot mechanicals. I shot 2 inch Rage hypodermics from the time I first started bow hunting. And I would get pass-throughs. Honestly, would pass-throughs at 25, 26 inch draw length, 40, 50 pounds. Would get pass-through on deer in Kentucky all the time.
Damn.
And my dad would just laugh. He would say, that's why. And I would, because I don't know if you would remember them, but my dad shot 125 grain NAP Thunderheads.
Mm-hmm.
Those were his favorite fixed heads ever. And I asked him, I was like, why don't I ever shoot those? He said, because this is a better head for what you shoot. And then Swacker came out. And I kept shooting Rage hypodermics for the longest time. And my dad switched to Swacker. He loved them to absolute death. He called them the greenie meanies because he said dude, I'm not kidding. I can't tell you how many deer that man killed with those Swackers. He killed a pile of deer with those and loved them. And every single deer he ever shot, he never lost a single one. And I watched him easily kill 40, 50 deer growing up with those heads. And
well, now I get why you shoot them.
And where I get the heavy poundage from, my dad did the same thing. Because my dad shot for Hoyt and PSE, so he was shooting 110-pound PSE mock flight back when he was young.
God.
I do not recommend it. I've shot one at the shop. I do not recommend it at all. It is, I'm sure it was the best bow at that time or one of the best bows, but it is scary to draw one of them back and you're hearing stuff popping and cracking. You're like, is this about to come apart in my hands? And I'm just sitting there and I shot it and it shot a bullet hole. And I said, all right, that's it. We're calling it on this one.
God.
And you have to think, because John, you can ask John. John chased speed when he was younger. Mm-hmm. And that I've done in years past now is try and chase speed. Because I've got that long draw. I've got the heavy. I can chase speed and still shoot a heavy arrow.
Yeah.
Because my arrow, I think right now I'm shooting 313, 314, and I'm shooting a 470 grain arrow.
Oh, man, you're opening up a fucking door.
Hey, we got time.
We don't. I have to get up at 4:00 tomorrow morning. All right. Well, look, we need to do another episode. But I do want to say this, okay, before we wrap this up, because you just said one thing that I want to point out. Earlier this year, I had I guess you could call it like an arrow series, right? I started it off with Troy Fowler.
Okay.
You know, Ranch Fairy had him on. He was talking about 650 and heavier, over 500 is where you should be, blah, blah, blah. And I get why he says that. Okay. I get it. I get it. But then I had Tim Gillingham on, who shoots low fours, I think, but he has a 33-inch draw. But he's able to get speed. And when you have that, you can pretty much shoot anything. I had a couple other, I forget who else. I had a couple other guys, and then T-Bone came on. And the reason I saved T-Bone for last was because a lot of what I do with archery, I base off of what he's taught me. And the one thing he and I both agreed on is that there's a happy medium for and again, the average bow hunter is what I'm looking at. Y'all that have these Gorilla Arms fans, I'm not worried about y'all. Okay, you could shoot anything and be fine. But me, my draw length is 27 and a half, or maybe even a little shorter. And so what I want to start doing, and why I'm honestly after this season, I love my bear, but I kind of want to get a Hoyt so I can go up in poundage, because bears don't go higher than 70. I want to get a bow that I can shoot a 450 grain arrow with at over 70 pounds and still be cooking. Because right now, I think with my current setup, it's what I consider like the happy medium setup, right? I'm at like 445, 450, 27 and a half inch draw, 70 pounds. I've had no issues, right? For the average guy, I think that arrow weight is perfect.
Absolutely.
But I'd love to build an arrow that's 500 grains and still going 270 foot a second. So the only thing I can do is go up in bow weight. So after shooting your bow, and like leaning all the way back because you've got 4 inches on me.
No.
I mean, dude, when I shot it, I could tell I was way back. But
when you shot it, I think it was sitting at 81.
When you shot to me then, because you told me 75. So that's fine. I mean,
back, my shoulders wanting to play with me a little bit, so I'm having to poundage.
See, even 75. Like, I'd love to get to 75. And so
absolutely.
Shooting that bow made me want to get a Hoyt, and it made me want to go up in poundage. So when I do that and my wife's like, why do you have a new bow again? I'm just going to have to blame you because I'm joking.
Off and try and kick me in the tail, I'm fine with that.
No, but I mean, it is a conversation that has been popping up again. A lot of people have been talking about arrow weight. You've got guys that shoot 415. You've got guys that shoot, my buddy Bergie shoots a 500. I think it was 544 or 577. I can't remember, but he's got a 27-inch draw, and he shoots 77 pounds. So he's shooting a heavier arrow and is still able to kill. So I mean, we can do a bunch of different things, but like I feel like somebody who's new into it is like, well, what should I build? What weight should I go for? They hear an extreme side of one side and an extreme side of the other, and there's just a happy medium there that I feel like everyone should be at. And
for somebody that were to come into the shop, say, I want something that I know is going to kill deer. I don't have to worry about not getting penetration. And they're 27, 28, 29 inches, 60 to 70 pounds. I would put them, like you're talking about, in that happy medium of 30 to 440 to maybe even 460 at most.
Yeah.
And they would be perfectly fine shooting that, because Georgia changed the law where there's not a poundage law anymore. Yeah. It's the air. It's 24 inches now. Yeah. So if you feel confident that you can make a good shot, I mean, that just shows right there that kids are killing deer at 25, 30 pounds with their bows. And I mean,
Aaron Warbritton's kid just killed one at 40 pounds with like I forget what arrow weight it was. It was pretty heavy, but he full pass through. I mean, granted, the arrow was still in the deer, but there was a hole on the other side of him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like you don't need. And okay, God, dude, we have to wrap it up with this because I'm gonna be
Yeah.
dead tomorrow.
We'll
I
do
got,
we'll do
yeah,
another
we'll
one.
do another one here soon. But to wrap it up with that, we don't need 80, 90 pounds. Like Cam Hanes is a badass. I love the dude, but I'm not gonna be buying or building a bow that shoots 90 pounds. I'm
No,
not that guy.
and anybody that walks into the shop says, I want an 80-pound bow, I will look at them and say, you don't, man, I'm the guy that shoots the 80-pound bow. I will look at them straight face and say, you don't need an 80-pound bow.
Mm-hmm.
There's been more deer killed with between 50 to 70 pounds than there has ever been with an 80-pounder.
Yeah.
You truly don't need it. It was something that I saw my dad do, so I wanted to do it too.
Yeah.
So
And there's nothing wrong with it. You want to shoot 80 pounds, shoot 80 pounds. If you feel that's what you need, go for it. But
and the way my dad always explained it, he said, I can draw it and shoot it accurately, I'm going to. And
Yep.
that's how but you absolutely do not need, if you're hunting in Georgia, you do not need an 80-pound bow to kill a deer.
no.
You could shoot with 60, you can shoot them with 50. It's like that. It's just a whole topic to dive into of different setups, arrows, broadheads, just draw length.
So yeah, we need to save that for
we will
for
for sure.
episode, because that right there is an entire episode in itself where we could literally cover what, I guess I'm not gonna say the minimum of a bow would be, but what you really probably need: arrow weight, broadhead, tuning, sights. Like there's so many things that we use. Do I need a dialed sight in Georgia? No, but it looks cool and it's a very well built sight. I'm not shooting out to 100 yards here, and if I do, I'm making a very poor decision because my bow is only sighted to 40.
Yes.
So, but anyway, man, look, dude, thank you for coming on and dealing with my crazy schedule. Honestly, after having Tiffany be sick and getting 2 cell cameras on public stolen, which if you're listening to this, the guy that stole it, thank you, because now you made me have to work harder and I really enjoy that. So when I kill a big deer on public, whether it be this year, next year, 5 years from now, I'm going to think of you. And I appreciate it. So thanks for that. But after all of that crazy stuff and my schedule just being totally just it kind of has felt like the world's falling apart. I'm glad we finally got this done and was able to get you on, and we are going to do a second one because you and I can dive into so many different rabbit holes, and especially now that you're working in a shop.
If I can get Mark and John to get on here and all 4 of us talk about it, because Mark worked at PSC. Mark was an engineer.
Yeah.
And with John, well, that would be us.
Well, let's do this, because me and John we did an episode together. It was like a collaboration episode. Sometime in the summer, I forget when, but I'm actually planning on coming in there here in the next few weeks. Because I want to shoot a few bows. I want to shoot a couple Hoyts. I want to shoot some primes, see if I like how prime feels. Probably some elites too. I kind of want to figure out if I really am shooting what I consider the most comfortable bow for me. So when I do that, let's sit down with John and Mark and say, hey, listen, we need to get together. We need to do a full in-depth. It can be as long as we need it to be. Probably going to have to do it after deer season so I can get a couple brownie points with the wife, because right now I've been very excessive. And we need to do that because I feel like a lot of people will learn a lot from that episode because you're getting 4 different viewpoints. So I'm down.
Oh, absolutely. Because you shoot Bear, John shoots Bowtech, I shoot Hoyt, and Mark shoots Matthews. It is 4 different bows, 4 different setups. So
and not even just that. I've been bow hunting for 3 years. You've been bow hunting your entire life. John's probably been bow hunting his whole life. Mark has, I guarantee you, been bow hunting for way longer than you and I are probably even alive.
The wheel was made.
Do what?
Mark's been bow hunting since the wheel was made. So.
Oh, that's yeah. Mark's old. Mark's old. I'll just say it. I'm just gonna say it.
But
Nah, I love Mark. I love all the dudes up at the shop. And honestly, when you got on there, I was so happy because
Yeah,
now when I go in
that,
there and
I will
I,
say that is honestly my dream job because I get to shoot bows, talk hunting, talk bows,
yeah.
and I get to do something I love every single day.
And then when I'm bored and go in there because I have nothing else going on, I can bother you instead of them, and I don't get the dirty looks anymore. I'm joking, but look, man, thank you for coming on. I have to get to bed and go check on my kid because yeah, it's been a struggle. But look, good
Yeah.
luck to you this season. If anybody needs their bow, worked on in the Georgia area, come see you guys. Are there any events that Ace is doing? I know that me and John talked about partnering up on next year's Southeastern Bow Hunter shoot. We haven't talked about it since, but we do need to sit down and plan that. Are there any events that Ace is doing that these people can go hang out with y'all, meet you guys, maybe buy some stuff?
Yes. Starting tomorrow night, actually, we're doing league night where we're going to be shooting 3-spot, rumble. We're going to be shooting a whole bunch of paper, leading up to next year in the 3D. We're going to be starting tomorrow night, and it'll go all the way through January, possibly into February, I think. So every
Nice.
Thursday night, starting at 6:30, come and practice, and then we start shooting at 7. And it normally lasts for about an hour, hour and 15, give or take. So
All right, cool. Well, everyone that's listening to it, this episode drops next week, but you guys are obviously going to keep doing it. So go out there,
yeah,
go support them. Best local shop around. Now that things have changed, there's been big changes that have happened in the past couple of years. That shop is, in my opinion, I would say the go-to place. People should drive as far as they need to come see you guys. But that's just my opinion. So they're gonna just have to come see y'all and see that I'm telling the truth.
absolutely.
All right, man. Cool. Well, I guess till next time, buddy.
Oh yeah. Hey, stay on for like 1 second after.
Okay. All right.